I've been reflecting on being autistic and this very persistent need for closure to a point where it really bothers a lot of other people because there's this belief of, why don't you just let it go? Why haven't you moved on by now? It's been years. Or how are you still talking about this? How are you still holding on to this? Why can't you just forgive and forget and move on? This should not matter to this extent. And in these moments, there's a very big disconnect between the autistic person versus the other person we may be interacting with. I've been reflecting on this a lot because I can see both sides. I've seen in many instances why neurotypical or non-autistic people may feel frustrated with the autistic individual who is just still stuck on a certain situation, right? But obviously, I also see it from the autistic perspective because I myself am autistic. So I just wanted to talk about why I think this happens and what we can do about it. Because even if we understand the why behind something, it doesn't necessarily excuse or make something okay. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the behavior is wrong or bad, but that doesn't also mean that that behavior doesn't negatively impact us. So let's just bring in some nuance here and discuss. So I want to say first that holding on to something that may have happened a while back, a long time ago, or it's just long past is not good for us. Right? Let's just get that out of the way. Even though there's a lot of reasons why we do this, and I'll get into that, don't worry, it doesn't serve us. And that's the important thing to come back to. And in that sense, we can at least be on the same page as the other people that are constantly telling us to let it go. I really do think that holding on to something long after it's passed and to the point where you can't move on from it, there's something wrong with that because it doesn't allow you to be present in your own life. It doesn't allow you to be present with certain people, with certain situations. It really does hold you back. I really, really want us to think about how many times in our life have we let an opportunity slip from our hands? How many times in our life did we hold back on fully living because we have not been able to fully move on from one thing, two things, three things, multiple things? And that's the thing. I don't want us to get to a point where we have to wait on specific closure in order to move forward. Because even though I feel like closure and gaining closure is obviously the ideal situation and we deserve closure, it's just not going to happen all the time. It's not going to happen all the time, and it's not going to happen when we need it and want it. Let's say you get closure 40 years later. What are you going to do in that meantime? Are you just going to put yourself on pause with a certain person or with a certain aspect of your life until you get that closure, and you just sit there and ruminate on the fact that you don't have closure? That's not realistic, and it's not good for you. We don't want to get to that place. And unfortunately, I've seen other autistic people get to this place where it's not just one thing that they're holding on to. It's multiple things with multiple people, and they get to a point where they're completely incapacitated. And to a certain extent, I have to chime in as someone who cares about them, as a community member, and say, hey, this aspect of you is quite literally debilitating you. It's quite literally causing your disablement, because you no longer can do anything without having to think about all these other areas of your life that are unresolved. You deserve resolution, yes, but that doesn't mean you'll get it. And obviously you haven't got it. So what are you going to do in the meantime? Because just being disabled by the lack of closure should not be the answer either. And these moments, these conversations are so hard to have because it could very easily feel invalidating, because you feel like you're justified in wanting closure, in having that last conversation where everyone understands what happens and all that kind of stuff, yes, that is very reasonable. Yes, ideally everyone should have conversational closures, but we don't get to have control over what other people are ready to talk about with us and what realizations they may be ready to have. I think the most misunderstood aspect of the autistic need to have closure is that we're just doing it to be stubborn, to be difficult, to criticize other people and hold them accountable. I feel like oftentimes people see us as police officers, like, you have to say sorry for this thing, you have to rectify this thing, whatever. But oftentimes when an autistic person is really, really pushing for a conversation, closure, it's a lot more practical than it may seem on the surface. Yes, I think depending on the person, there's emotional underlayers of it. And perhaps for some people, the emotional aspects may be the priority. But I really do think that for a lot of other autistic folks, it's more logical than anything, which may be hard for even us to realize because we may feel emotional about this thing that happened, the lack of closure, because it's not logical to us. And that's the thing, is sometimes we may get emotionally upset because something doesn't logically make sense. And I do think it's important for us to start to distinguish what it is for ourselves, because it's important to know yourself on a deeper level, right? Not just that you're emotionally dysregulated or emotional, but where do these emotions come from and why do we have it? Are we emotional because we're triggered, because something in the past happened and this occurrence reminds us of that thing? Are we just naturally more emotional? Or are we actually more emotionally dysregulated because we're logical thinkers? And when something happens that's not logical, that upsets us because there's no logical resolution. There's no logical way to understand and conceptualize something. But one thing I really did realize is that not having closure for us oftentimes means that we don't have the answers we need to objectively navigate the world. If we had a falling out with a certain person, if something bad happened at our work and we got fired unexpectedly, we want closure, not because we want to have control over that situation, but we simply want the data points, the information to process effectively so that we could download that information into future situations, relationships, choices, so that we could better navigate those situations and not make the same mistakes. And so when you don't have closure and you are not even able to talk about what happened, it makes you feel very, very scared for yourself in future situations because you don't trust yourself enough to navigate those things without messing up if you weren't even able to get the data points to understand why you screwed up in the first place or why things went wrong in the first place. It then feels like you're just banished to live a life where you're constantly going to make mistakes, not knowing you're making mistakes, and then not even having the opportunity to improve on those mistakes or correct those mistakes because you don't even know what went wrong. So basically, the autistic need for closure is actually our need to hold ourselves accountable. And I think that's the thing a lot of people don't realize, is that they see our need for closure as us being selfish, when in reality, a lot of the times, I'm not going to say every time for every person, but a lot of the times our need for closure is, I need to learn this lesson. If I'm going to have this thing happen and it goes to shit, it falls apart, yes, that sucks, but I at least need to learn from it. I need to know what to do about this from here on out when it happens again with different people and situations. I need to understand what's going on here. So therefore, I need closure for that. Is this all making sense? And so what do we do when we can't get closure then? When it's just impossible. We've tried, we've asked many times, we've pushed, but it's just not happening, right? What do we do then? I'm going to say this very loud and clear. So if you've zoned out by now, pop back in. Let me get your attention. Give me your attention. Place your attention right here in my hands. Lock in with me. Okay? You ready? Trust yourself. Learn to trust your own judgment. I think that's one of the biggest things too. We feel like we can't trust walking away with our own closure on our own without the input of other people. We feel like we need other people in order to have actual closure that we can trust. Trust your judgment. You are allowed to arrive at your own conclusions and what you want to do about it. Ask yourself, how do you feel about the situation? What is the takeaway from it? And you are allowed to walk away with that. That is enough. You don't need the other person in order to get your closure. You are allowed to get your closure on your own. Yes, maybe certain closures might feel very powerful and cathartic if it would involve everyone, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't have just as powerful, if not more powerful, cathartic moments of closure without certain people saying or realizing certain things. You will make mistakes. You will continue to make mistakes. That is okay. That is a part of life. The question is, are you willing to reflect on those mistakes? Are you willing to actually do something about those mistakes to hold yourself accountable if you, upon reflection, realize that you don't feel good about those mistakes? Sometimes the closure is just you understanding what it means to you and walking away with that. And that's the thing I want you guys to walk away from this video with. You can gain closure on your own. You don't need other people in order to have closure. Your closure is not contingent on another person. You have that power. Use it. Really, 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 really use that power that you have. You are allowed to. And with that being said, y'all, think about all of the people and situations you're waiting on. You're waiting for that closure. It's time to wrap it up. It's time to reflect on all of those open-ended things in your life. Close the loop on them. Close the loop, find your own closure, walk away, make room for more people and situations to come in and for you to experience. With that being said, drink some water, stay regulated. I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.